So after years of dangerous disinformation being spread on social media, it is time for Silicon Valley's unregulated days to end. That is the message President Obama delivered to an audience actually at Stanford University just this week, where he said, quote, "People are dying because of misinformation."
People like Putin, and Steve Bannon for that matter, understand it's not necessary for people to believe disinformation in order to weaken democratic institutions. You just have to flood a country's public square with enough raw sewage. You just have to raise enough questions, spread enough dirt, plant enough conspiracy theorizing that citizens no longer know what to believe.
Now, I applaud the president's message, but I have to ask, where have you been? This is a speech that should have been delivered years ago, and not on some random Thursday in April at a California university, but on a platform the whole world would pay attention to. Our panel is back with us. Maya, correct me if I'm wrong here. Those are my thoughts. I am a firm believer that we have a disinformation pandemic around the world. Your reaction to Obama's speech?
Well, I'm glad he gave it. I'm glad that he was fairly unvarnished. I'm glad that he actually used language that mimicked Steve Bannon's because it is an intentional strategy, sadly and unfortunately, for our democracy. And yeah, look, we can always talk about when and how and whether he should have done it sooner. I think there's a debate there. I just don't think it's our problem right now. I think our problem is that we have to now come together as a nation and understand that we have disinformation coming from our own elected officials. We have a great big lie that too many Americans actually believe are true or might be true, that our elections are somehow up for grabs based on conspiracy theories that have no data or support behind them, where we have had Republicans who even work for the President Donald Trump at Homeland Security, his own attorney general who protected him in the context of the Mueller probe. Yet, we know that they actually told the president that there was simply no facts or evidence of any substantial voter fraud. I mean, when we've got those kinds of conditions, I think the message is welcome. I think we have to be glad he gave those words. I think it's more incumbent on for us to make sure that Congress actually tries to act on it, but that actually every state and every municipality does what it can do in the midst of it and not wait for Congress, which is far too broken right now. And the American public, that we have a real conversation about how we educate ourselves in order not to fall victim to disinformation. It does require actually having some good civic engagement training. It's time we did that again and stopped fighting about history lessons in our schools and what books our children are reading, and hope they're reading a lot more of them and that we all understand how this works, because this is fundamental right now to our democracy.
David, Obama, no doubt about it. President Obama, former President Obama, no doubt about it, one of the greatest orators of the modern era. And he acknowledges that he should have recognized the extent of the problem sooner. He referenced the 2016 election as a major turning point. But it actually goes back longer than that. I mean, in my opinion, it goes back to 2011 when you had Trump spreading the birther conspiracy. Is that not so?
It goes back further than that. It goes back to the Clinton administration when technology companies were given a set of rights that sort of absolved them of responsibility for being the media companies they were. And then for year after year after year, as they gained power, and we saw the power of this disinformation, and we saw the need for them to self-regulate, and they weren't doing it, politicians on both sides said, I'm not going to mess with them. Those guys are pretty rich. They could be helpful to me. So I think there's plenty of blame to go around here. And I totally agree with you. I think that President Obama should have been out there with this earlier, but it ties into the point that Maya made. It ties into the point from the last segment. We can't have a discussion about this politely on Thursday afternoons in lovely academic settings. The disinformation that is being put out there ties to the desire to suppress textbook, ties to the lies of Republican politicians, ties to the desire to suppress the vote. It's all part of an effort to create a false reality in which these Republicans can gain power and keep power indefinitely. And that's the reason that President Obama and every Democratic leader ought to be out there on every available platform every day from now until the election, sounding the alarm that we are in a critical moment and putting the pieces together, trying to show people how all the pieces of this puzzle fit together in an authoritarian power grab that we never thought was possible in the United States of America.
Yeah, I completely agree with you on all those points. Fernand, Obama addressed Silicon Valley's responsibility. I want you to listen to this. Watch.
Companies need to be more transparent about how they operate. So much of the conversation around disinformation is focused on what people post. The bigger issue is what content these platforms promote.
So a major speech like this is great, no doubt about it, but what more can and should the former president, be doing to tackle this problem with the resources he has, with the platform he has?
Well, Eamon, that's really the question, isn't it? And I don't think the burden should just fall on former President Obama. You also have former Republican President George W. Bush. You have former Democratic President Bill Clinton. This should be all of the leaders of the country who still have some sort of influence and standing, banding together like David Rothkopf talked about, and talk about the position that the country finds itself in today. Very sadly and candidly, I don't think that you are going to be able to stop this disinformation cancer, which has metastasized and been left to grow rampant in time for the 2022 elections. Frankly, I doubt we're going to be able to do anything for the 2024 elections, which is why I come back to the point I made earlier. We are hanging by the thread with the last line of defense being the rule of law. And right now, the rule of law falls firmly in the hands of the Department of Justice and to what they can do to protect election integrity, to what they can do to protect voting rights, and to what they can do to hold accountable the traitors and the saboteurs that Senator Warren talked about and that we all saw act in unison in the run-up to January 6th and January 6th, and then after January 6th, hold them accountable to the rule of law. If that doesn't happen, Eamon, no amount of legislation on Silicon Valley or no tough worded letters to the CEOs of these companies, I think, will be able to solve and tackle the real problem, which is a democracy that is under assault right now and that is on the brink of being lost if we don't use the rule of law to hold accountable those that threatened and tried to overturn the democracy a year and a half ago.